Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, Swordsoul is back. Swordsoul has been a top tier deck since its release in Master Duel, and recently it's kind of fallen out of favor. So what can we do to revitalize this strategy? Protos. The answer is Protos. Protos is currently unlimited in Master Duel, currently at 3, meaning that you can play 3 copies. Now, most of the time we played 1 copy because it's searchable off of things like Emergence as well as Heavenly Dragon Circle. However, with the release of Tier, being able to go Protos Call Dark is much better. So yeah, that's what we're doing. That's the whole game plan, is to floodgate our opponent. Cool. So let's see how this deck performs in a modern game, right? So let's start off by saying we're playing less Tenyis than previously. We're only playing 2 Adhara, 2 Vishada, and 2 Ashana. This means that we have less options to go for other outside of the Tenyis. Now, granted, you can still play additional Tenyis. The problem is, at least for me, that you have to cut out additional tech cards. Things like Maxi, Ash Blossom, Evenly Matched, Infip, etc., right? Now, granted, you could just play more cards, which does make it a little bit more inconsistent, but I will be exploring a 60-card version of this that has been popping up in the OCG, and I do want to try that as well. So yeah, we're only playing a few Tenyis, and we're notably not playing a level 4. However, to compensate for that, in order to go into a synchro monster utilizing a 7 and a 4, that being one of the tokens as well as a Tenyi, we are able to go into the Psychic and Punisher. So we're also playing that as well. So that's why that's in there. As for the Sword Souls, we're playing triple Moye, double Taya, which honestly, I might play 3 of this. There were a lot of times where I ended up banishing both of them off of a Desires, which ended up hurting significantly. And it always only seemed to be that one that I ended up banishing 2 of. I never banished both Long One, hilariously. Anyway, so yeah, we're playing the 2 Taya and then the 2 Long One. We're also playing triple Ecclesia. It's very good going first, it's very good going second. Pretty self-explanatory. And then, of course, the triple Protos. As for the rest of the cards, we are running ourselves 2 Pot of Desires, 2 Triple Tactics Talents. Triple Tac is very good. It's also one of the cards that I have a very, mixed opinion on. It feels very good when you're actually able to utilize it and, rip a card out of your opponent's hand, steal one of their cards, draw 2, etc., etc. It's very, very nice, right? But most of the time, it actually just doesn't come up. I feel like it would be better if I was playing against more Tier. I just wasn't. When I played against Tier, this deck was great. When I wasn't, it wasn't as good, which tends to be the problem, and it's why we're playing the evenly matched. So there's that. We're playing, obviously, triple triple Emergence, the double Called By on the 1 crossout, double Heavenly Dragon Circle, which notably can search out any of your worms, which is very nice. So it can even search out Protos, which is another way to get to 2 Protos. And then, of course, the triple Evenly Matched, as I mentioned previously, triple Infip, and 1 Blackout. Blackout, honestly, the only reason that I'm actually playing it is to banish it off of Chi-Xiao. It's occasionally pretty nice to have a way to deal with back row or stuff like that. That's outside of or that's within engine. So there's that. But in all honesty, this card's kind of mid. You can't really cut it because it does help for if you do end up getting hand trapped or infipped or something like that. But yeah, it's not as strong as it used to be. As for the extra deck is pretty similar to previous builds. The 1 Yazi, the double Baxia, the 1 Draco Berserker, the 1 Dragite, the double Chi-Xiao, 1 Xiaofeng. Xiaofeng honestly never came up. Normally you would go for Xiaofeng to prevent your opponent from Nibiruing you or something like that, locking them out of lights. And then, under Protoss you could also lock them out of darks. But honestly, I never really found a way to realistically make this and do it consistently where it was actually useful. Also, lights just aren't as useful as well. So there's that. I mean, theoretically, you could potentially go Yazi and then have Taya banish a level modulation to then go for Adhara and the Yazi to level modulate into the Xiaofeng, which technically would lock them out of darks, but that is so next to impossible, it's just not really worth it. So this is a very cuttable card. Then we're playing 1 Baron, 1 Changing, the Sinister Sovereign, Shishing Long One, and of course Psychic and Punisher. Then 2 Monk and 1 Shaman. Honestly, I'd love to run the 3rd Monk, but with how many Tenyis we have, it's not nearly as useful. So having only 2, it never came up that I needed the 3rd. So there's that. That's it for the deck. Let's hop into the replays and show you how this deck performs. Alright, here we are going first, and with a pretty decent hand. Not insane, but pretty decent. So we're going to start off here with the Pot of Desires. We're going to banish a whole bunch. They're going to ash that. That's fine. We're going to then go for Triple Tactics Talents to look at our opponent's hand. Look, looking at our opponent's hand is by far the best thing that we can do. Being able to gain that information is very valuable. So, I know it just passed. They had Nimble Beaver, Blue, Smashers, and I believe it was Melfi Puppy. So those are the cards that are currently in their hand, and yeah, we're going to shuffle away the Nimble Beaver so that we no longer have to deal with that. And now we get to basically play the game without them ever interrupting us. We're going to go for Emergence here to grab up the Moye. The reason I go for the Moye here is because while we do have Taya, I think a Moye is going to be more advantageous to draw into an additional card, and we can dump the Taya in order to grab up, with the long one. We end up grabbing a Heavenly Dragon Circle, which is fantastic, because that now means that we can go for the Protoss without actually needing to go for Protoss, basically. Search it out with Emergence. Anyway, we're going to go for the Ashana here in order to grab up the Adhara, which will then be tributed for the search of the Protoss, and then Protoss will then be special summoned to call Dark. We can then activate our effect in order to grab back the Taya with the Adhara, and then pass the turn. So they're locked out of special summoning anything that is dark. They have the Sinister Sovereign, we have the Chi-Xiao. We're going to negate as soon as the Swap Frog, which they drew for turn, comes out, and then they're going to activate that Smashers in hand, realize that they can't do anything because they have to banish their blue, and we still have the ability to basically, you know, kill them on the crackback. And since their monster would be banished, the Swap Frog, it's not like the Ronin Totem that they're about to send to the graveyard is going to do anything. Melfi Puppy's not really going to do anything. I guess like it'd be on the field, but then it would immediately get banished due to our Chi-Xiao, unless they banish the Chi. Again, lots of things where it's just like, yeah, they're not really going to do anything there. So yeah, Protoss, woo. Alright, how does this deck fare going second? Well, we did end up drawing a pretty decent going second hand with Ecclesia as well as a hand trap, but it would be nice to play an additional hand trap or to see one. My opponent normal summons Merly, and I'm like, okay, if you're normal summoning that, you probably have a pretty mid hand. I'm going to ash that. And yeah, that is exactly what happens. They end up setting a card and passing. Cool. So we're going to draw for turn, and hey, look at that, it's Protoss. We're going to start off with Pot of Desires to kind of see if they have an Ash Blossom. They don't. We draw into a long one as well as a second Protoss, which is very funny. So now we're going to go for our long one, which we ended up seeing here, and then we can go for the Sinister Sovereign, because I'm almost certain that this is a SnowiKs, since they, you know, normal summoned a tier, and then they set a card. So if it's SnowiKs, Chi-Xing just solos. It just wins the game. So there's that. Anyway, we're going to go for the Ecclesia. They're going to go for the Havness. I'm going to negate that because it's a hard once per turn. And yeah, we're going to go for the Moye. We're going to activate the Moye, reveal the Protoss. Out comes the SnowiKs, to the which we will promptly banish it, giving them an additional 1200 damage. We are then also going to rip a card out of their hand, and look at that hand. Cyberstein. Gotta love it. Well, yeah, Triple Tactics is very good when it works. The problem is sometimes it's just not activatable. But hey, drawing, you know, having the effect of 3 banned cards is pretty good. Alright, here we are once again going first, and look at that, it's Protoss! Crazy! Anyway, we drew a pretty phenomenal hand, both Called By and Crossout, to deal with any of our problematic cards, as well as Moye Long One, which is just insane. We're going to activate the Long One here, pitching the Protoss. This is one of the reasons why we were playing multiple Protoss, because yeah, we could just send it to the graveyard and we don't have to worry about keeping it in hand. We're going to go for the Chi-Xing here in order to go into the Chi-Xiao, which will then give us the ability to draw 2 cards. That's right, Pot of Greed. We draw into Ecclesia as well as a hand trap, which is very nice, as well as we are now able to search out the Protoss with Emergence. So we're going to go for the Protoss here. We're going to banish 3, which, hey, we had exactly 3 attributes in the graveyard, thanks to Moye, a water, Long One, a fire, and Protos, a dark. So yeah, now we can go for the Protos here, and we can set to and pass Protos called Dark, and at this point the game is probably over if my opponent is on tier. They're going to reveal that they are in fact on a tier. They're going to activate the effect of the Agito. I'm gonna play really poorly here. I decided to activate my Qixing in order to deal with the Mudora, and then I'm going to activate the Called by the Grave in order to deal with the Agito. Realistically, shouldn't have done this. Should have just activated the Ash Blossom and not activated this guy's effect. That would have been a much better play. But I decided to not do that because I'm stupid. But it doesn't really matter because whatever they mill, it doesn't really do anything for them. They're going to activate the Rhino Heart, which will then special summon itself, and at this point, I have made a terrible goof. Realistically, I do need to deal with the Rhino Heart, because if they get 2 level 4s onto their field, they can then go for a Baguska, which then, you know, puts them into this game, which I would really rather them not do. Anyway, they're going to go and activate Heartbeat at this point, which is a choice, I guess. I don't know. But we're just going to activate the Crossout Designator, calling Triple Tack. So yeah, we are going to also Ash Blossom the Kelbeck, which is going to mill more cards. So we're going to Ash that. They're going to go for the Rhino Heart and the SnowiK, and then they're going to add to their hand the Havness. Instead of adding the Sheeran to the hand, they're going to dump the Sheeran, which is very funny, and they have nothing that they can summon because, hey, you can't summon any dark monsters, or special summon them. Anyway, they're going to mill some more cards with the Merly that they ended up special summoning, and now they're going to go for the Elf to bring back the Diviner. I'm going to negate that with the Chixiao, and then they're going to pass the turn. They do have Havness in hand, but honestly, I don't care, because what's it going to do? We're going to immediately start with the Protoss. They're going to activate the Havness, then they're going to activate the Elf, and I'm like, okay, yeah, no, Elf's not happening. Again, I'm going to negate that. And then they scoop it up, realizing, oh, yeah, even if I mill stuff, it's not going to do anything because I don't have any non-target or non-dark targets for my fusion summons, which means I can't do anything. Yay, Protoss. Alright, so here we are once again going first, and Pot of Desires, Emergence, Moye. Hey, we could do something with this. So we're going to start off with the Pot of Desires, which will promptly be ashed, because apparently we are still playing this card. But yeah, we banish a whole bunch of cards. Anyway, Moye. Moye effect is going to reveal the Emergence, and again, okay, cool, yeah, no, that's fine. We're going to activate the Emergence here, and we're going to grab up the long one. We're going to activate the effect of the long one in order to go into our Chixiao, which then allows us to go into, or sorry, we're going to go into the Chixiao, we're going to activate the effect of the Moye, as well as the Chixiao, and I'm going to add the Blackout to hand! Oops, I misclicked. I legitimately misclicked here. Realistically, I should have banished the Blackout to give us access to a 10. For example, a Qixing or a Chengying, both of which would be absolutely fantastic here, and would probably allow us to go into a Protoss as well on top of that. For example, if I go Qixing, we can then banish the Chixiao, and I'd feel pretty comfortable being able to do that, to go into the Protoss to call Dark, and then, you know, lock our opponents out of Dark. But alas, I decided not to do that, and now we are stuck with this. So yeah, out comes the Rhino Heart, and I'm going to promptly negate that because I don't want them to have a free send. And it turns out my play was absolutely correct, because now we can destroy all of our opponent's cards. They're going to go for the SnowiK here. I'm going to activate my my Ash Blossom, and then they will activate Kelbeck. Okay, well, it's Protoss in a dream, and guess what? We don't have anything except for Moye top deck. Fantastic. You'll love to see it. That was the last Moye, by the way, because I banished the other one. But that's fine, because I also banished both of my Tayas. Anyway, we're going to go for the Chixiao here. We're going to activate the Moye. We're going to then draw into Infip, and we're going to add it the long one. We're going to activate the long one. My opponent is going to realize that the game is over, because as soon as I make the Chengying, the game is over. So, yeah. Didn't even have to Protoss that time. Just top deck Moye. Alright, we're back with the deck, and in all honesty, the biggest problem with this deck is honestly going second. A lot of the decks nowadays have the ability to play through, you know, not play through, but end on boards that can stop the opponent even trading 1-for-1 with all of their cards, which Swordsoul tends to do pretty well with, right? Basically every single one of their cards tends to be something that you have to interact with, and they gain a lot of advantage even if you do end up interacting with them with things like, you know, Ecclesia being able to tag out at quick effect speed, the Vishutta being able to bounce if it goes to the graveyard, you know, all of these kind of things, and just having like difficult ways to deal with each one of their cards. However, at this point, you know, you could just SnowiK, Rukalos, etc., or you could just play Flunder, in which case, oof, yeah, can't really beat that. And I think that is the biggest issue with this deck, and it's why we're playing evenly matched. If you end up going up against a non-meta deck, well, I shouldn't say non-meta, but if you end up going against things like Flu or like what have you, you know, all of those anti-meta stuff, etc., etc., you tend to have a more difficult time. So you kind of have to main deck your side deck cards, which tends to be things like the evenly matched. Now, Protos is still very good, and I would absolutely play 3 of this, even though it is expensive. I get it. But yeah, this card is almost necessary at 3. It does so much for the deck. You can pitch it off of Long One and then still be able to search it. You still have the ability to reveal it off of Moye. You can even banish it now off of Taya. You don't need to rely as heavily on having that one Protoss, so drawing it isn't necessarily a brick, which is very nice because you can still search it off of the same ways that we did previously, and you're no longer worried about banishing it off of Pot of Desires. And then on top of that, yeah, just Protoss Cult Dark is an FTK against like a lot of decks, most notably Tier, the like Tier 0 deck. Now, granted, this was played in Plat, and in Plat, there is a lot less Tier and a lot more jank, and because of that, it's a lot worse. So do take that with a grain of salt. The lower you go, the less that this build in particular will do better, and you're probably better off playing the one Protoss and then playing more Tenyis and stuff like that. Anyway, that's going to be it for this episode. I hope that you guys did indeed enjoy. If you did, a like is very much so appreciated. And if you want to check out more content like this, as well as more Yu-Gi-Oh!, then just be sure to subscribe. And we thank you guys so much for watching. And remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye. Shout out to the Frost Guard, my members. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you enjoy the content.